Today, we need to talk about what went down in Thornton Township during their first caucus to nominate candidates for the heads of the Thornton Township Board of Supervisors, the position currently held by your super mayor. This is, of course, the role that makes up the bulk of her income. For those who might not remember, let's break down her salary. Hanyard makes about $50,000 as the mayor of the village of Dalton, which many people assume is her only job. However, she actually holds two government positions. She earns $225,000 from her role as head of the Thornton Township Board of Supervisors, which is more than the governor of Illinois makes, bringing her total salary to nearly $300,000.
You make almost $300,000 between your two elected positions.
I do not. I don't know where you got that number from.
We got it from her own village and township records.
She is of course up for re-election, but it's important to note that she was never actually elected to the Thornton Township position. Instead, she took over someone else's term. As we've discussed on this channel, she essentially tried to rig the system in her favor by reducing the salary for her predecessor to just $25,000 a year, a move that helped her secure and maintain her position.
Longtime municipal attorney Bert Odelson says he was stunned when he saw the latest move by controversial Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany Hanyard, who also doubles as the mayor of Dalton. 2 weeks ago, the Township Board passed an ordinance that allows Hanyard to continue collecting her $224,000 a year salary. But if anyone other than Hanyard gets the job, the ordinance resets that salary to $25,000 a year.
But guess what? Despite everything, they went ahead with the nomination process and she lost. And after that, she completely flipped out. It's honestly amazing. We're going to break it all down and talk about what happened, but before we dive in, I want to thank everyone who supports this channel through actualjusticewarrior.com.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Us here at Thornton Township, we always had a primary. Always. We never not had a primary where 10,000 residents come out and express who they want.
Right off the bat, I want to highlight how rare it is for the super mayor to sit down for an interview with media that tends to be critical of her. You could see the panic on her face, clearly showing that she's scared. What she's saying is that typically they would have a primary, but instead they chose to hold a caucus, and she believes this was a move to block her from securing the nomination. She had been urging her supporters to show up early to cheer for her and help get her on the ballot, but it was clear her support was lacking, and that's largely because of her actions: stealing taxpayer money, attempting to raise property taxes, and various instances of corruption, like overspending on personal travel, lavish expenses, and using taxpayer funds to promote herself with massive billboards and flyers.
It's an issue. It's been an issue for some time.
We just look up and we're paying for stuff, and it just makes no sense.
Despite all of that, her supporters simply didn't show up. However, the super mayor did show up, and she was visibly furious. She believed that they had strategically worked against her to prevent her from running for re-election.
Can I ask you a real question? Is it really worth it? In terms of just everything that you've gone through.
I want to show the youth of today and tomorrow what it looks like to come out of controversy. Yes, y'all done ran my name through the mud and did everything, but guess what? As you pull the third on me, I must grow from it, and I will grow from it because I done went through it, but now I'm going to grow from it.
The super mayor claims that they dragged her name through the mud, throwing dirt on her, but she insists that, just like a plant, when you throw dirt on her, she'll only grow stronger. She vowed to come back, win despite the odds, and secure the nomination for the Thornton Township Board of Supervisors. She even declared that there was nothing the local Democratic Party could do to remove her from the ballot. Of course, the situation became even more ironic when the local Democratic Party ended up booting her off the ballot after she lost the caucus.
Folks lined up early and in the cold for the Thornton Township Democratic Caucus. Everyone outside and those inside the auditorium were here to vote on who will be the Democratic nominees in the township, including the coveted supervisor position. And Tuesday night's caucus left the current supervisor, Tiffany Hanyard, fuming.
We didn't run none of this the right way. Illegal. Napoleon.
Things clearly went south for the super mayor when she showed up at the meeting, claiming that her supporters were all outside, ready to caucus for her. She immediately started calling the proceedings illegal, illegal, illegal. clearly frustrated after being booted off the ballot. This was particularly embarrassing for her, as she hadn't been elected to the top spot in the Thornton Township position, a role she's mismanaged for years. Now, there is some backlash over whether the caucus system is the right way to choose nominees. And to be fair, the supermayor does make a valid point there. And no, I'm not just saying that because I enjoy making content based on her. Though let's be honest, the supermayor videos get plenty of views and I'm fully aware of my own corrupt incentives. But it's worth mentioning that it's been 30 years since the caucus system was last used in Thornton Township, so there's some merit to her criticism.
Henry pleading her case to committeeman State Senator Napoleon Harris. As a committeeman, Harris set the rules Tuesday night, the first caucus in Thornton Township in nearly 30 years.
The person who says this seems to be outdated, you say what to that?
People in Thornton Township may be new to caucuses because they haven't had them in a while, but this has been a tradition for many other townships around the state.
And those in this room came out to see if Hilliard would get the nomination, an uphill battle for the controversy surrounding her administration. Hilliard was not in favor of the caucus.
I will be suing everybody tomorrow. This is illegal.
This is illegal in your favor?
As you can see, the supermayor is clearly furious. She even announced that she would be suing everyone involved, proclaiming that lawsuits were coming for everyone who crossed her. In this instance, while I do believe that holding a caucus in Thornton Township is technically appropriate, it's not uncommon in other Illinois townships. I do think she has a valid point. The process should have been put up for a primary vote, and in my opinion, she should lose at the ballot box. After all, this is how things have been done for the last 30 years, with the caucus system only being used again after such a long hiatus.
Okay, so let's talk about it. I mean, your concern is you brought people in to free bus.
All the people outside, they let not one person.
I understand that some of you might be skeptical of my mild defense of her, especially since I certainly benefit from the chaos caused by the supermayor, and I know you all enjoy the entertainment value. But let's not forget that there are about 1,000,000 people living under Thornton Township and 200,000 residents in the village of Dalton, all of whom are suffering because of her leadership.
Hilliard used Thornton Township buses to transport supporters, mostly seniors, yet many of the supporters did not get inside the packed auditorium of 600 people.
This is a process that's been going on way before me, and it's just I'm exercising my rights as a committeeman to hold a caucus.
And it is legal. When it was all said and done, the caucus voted, and Hilliard did not get the nomination.
Anytime the supermayor has a valid point or a reasonable argument, I'm willing to give her a fair hearing. But eventually, she betrays herself. This is a woman who has been repeatedly accused of misusing taxpayer dollars for her own political gain. And what do we learn when she attends this meeting? She makes a decent case about how the caucus system hasn't been used in the last 30 years, and how it seems like they specifically planned this to boot her off the ballot. Something they've even admitted. That's completely unfair, and she argues that she should be able to sue over it. However, what do we find out? She was planning to bring her supporters, mostly senior citizens, many of whom are likely confused about what's going on, using taxpayer-funded buses from Thornton Township. Once again, she's accused of misappropriating taxpayer funds to support her own political career. And here she is doing it yet again in an attempt to save her job. Absurdity piled on top of absurdity. But can we really be surprised at this point? The supermayor has already shown us who she is, time and time again.
Yet listen to who the caucus placed on the ballot.
The Democratic slate that would represent Thornton Township at the April 1st consolidated election reads as follows. For Supervisor, Napoleon Harris.
Hilliard left emotional and upset knowing her name will not appear on the April ballot, to the pleasure of many in the room.
I'm honestly glad to see the group of people who showed up at the gymnasium cheer as the supermayor left in anger and frustration. I'm fully in support of that. This is exactly what we wanted to see all along. The voters, the real citizens of Thornton Township and the village of Dalton, rejecting her. Unlike in Dalton, where she was elected once, despite a recall election that was thrown out by the courts over a procedural issue, Thornton Township never voted her into this position. So it's encouraging to see the voters speak out so strongly on this issue. That said, it's not as clean as I'd like it to be. There were certainly some questionable tactics involved in the process, and we have to be honest and call things as they are, especially when so much of my own personal income is tied to this. In this case, I think it's fair to say that the moves made have raised a lot of doubts, especially in terms of how it affects people's livelihoods, including my own.
I think it's very unfair that I don't get a chance to make the decision of who I want where.
And who did you want to vote for?
I wanted to vote for Tiffany.
Next, we hear from one of Tiffany Henyard's supporters, who frankly comes across as rather unhinged. Then, the opposition weighs in, pointing out that this woman showed up late and then complained when she couldn't get in.
She came late, and then she had an attitude because they couldn't get in.
I suppose we'll have to wait for the lawsuits to determine if everything was handled properly during this hearing. However, it turns out the only option left for her is a write-in campaign. The supermayor is now pushing for that, and some of her supporters, likely those who benefit from her corruption, seem to be backing the idea.
Henyard can only become a write-in candidate, which her supporters say is not impossible.
I think enough people know her name to write her name in, and I believe we could still win it.
One of the things I find particularly entertaining is that before the meeting, despite the clear setup for her failure, the supermayor was giving interviews to the press, confidently stating, "They can't beat me, that's why they're afraid to go to the polls." When asked whether she would secure the Democratic nomination and what she would do if she didn't, she had some bold words for the public in Thornton Township.
Henyard walked out of the meeting and into a waiting SUV without speaking to us, but here's what she said before the caucus began.
They can't beat me. If they could beat me, they would have went to the polls.
What do you do tonight if you don't get the Democratic Party's nomination?
What do you mean? I will be victorious tonight. You will see. My people are here. They're not going to go nowhere. The show will go on.
Let's just say that her confidence didn't quite match up with reality. But of course, the supermayor is planning to file lawsuits, and the legitimacy of these lawsuits will ultimately depend on the technicalities. Given that the meeting was so brief and the claim that her supporters, who were allegedly bussed in using Thornton Township tax dollars, weren't let in, maybe she actually has a legitimate case. Just maybe the supermayor could win one of these election lawsuits that even the evil orange man couldn't pull off. But I'd love to hear what you think about all this in the comments below.
Her allies now figuring out their next steps.
This is the biggest. This is the biggest. This is a fraud.
To fight the result.
This is criminal. I would easily say hundreds of people that were not allowed in to be a part of the process.
Was the supermayor cheated? Was she defeated? If you're in Thornton Township, will you be writing in her name to ensure, as she promised, that the show goes on? Or do you think this was a smart move to finally get a power-hungry, tax-wasting dictator out of office in the only way she deserves? It may be shady, but it's nothing compared to the shady tactics she's been using for years. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, show your support by leaving a like, subscribing for more content, and following me on social media. You can also support me through the links in the description. This has been my take on the supermayor getting booted off the ballot. Until next time.